Hi, everyone. Good morning. Just a quick note, we will be getting started shortly. We're just waiting to have a few more folks join the call. In the meantime, while we wait for some of the others to join, if you haven't already, just please change your name on Zoom to reflect your first and last name or your business name, just so that our speakers and moderators know who's with us in the room today. So we'll be getting started in a moment, and thank you for your patience. All right. I think we've got a good turnout so far. So we'll just keep admitting folks as they join, but we'll officially get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to today's webinar, Doing Business in France and Italy, presented by the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture and Invest Nova Scotia. My name is Sasha Smith, and I am a Seafood Marketing Officer with the department, and I will be your host today. We're just really glad that you could join us. Today's webinar is for Nova Scotia seafood companies that are interested in learning more about market trends and logistics and opportunities in these two key European markets. We have a fantastic group of experts here with us today who are keen to share their knowledge, and thank you to all of our speakers. Before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping notes. The session will run until approximately 11 a.m. this morning. We are planning for 2 question and answer periods, as well, if time permits, a quick break about halfway through. If to ask a question during the question and answer period, we ask that you either raise your hand or leave your question in the chat. If raising your hand, we ask that you wait until your question is acknowledged, and then you're welcome to go off mute, introduce yourselves, and let us know who your question is for. To accommodate as many questions as possible, we ask that questions be kept brief. If things run a little bit long, we may need to interject to move along to the next question. If that is the case, we will happily connect you with the person your question is directed to after the webinar to keep that conversation going. And if you choose to ask questions through the chat, please feel free to drop them in there at any point during the presentation, and we'll loop around to them once we get to question and answer. I will also acknowledge that this session is being recorded, and we'll share the link with everybody afterward. And we can also share the respective presentation materials after as well. So taking a quick look at our agenda, it is a very busy one. So we are in the webinar introduction, and shortly we will hear from the Honourable Kent Smith, Minister of the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, with welcome remarks. We'll move on to our trade commissioners on the call today, Julie Ferguson-Sanidi, Yannick Dehi, Kamer Hamid, and Anna Sacco, for more information about their markets in the EU. We'll move on to Felipe Macias, Nova Scotia Seafood's EU and market consultant, with a presentation on France and Italy. Question and answer, break. Just after the break, we'll have insights from an Italian seafood importer, David Massetti, with SQS Network. At 10:30, we'll hear from Rob McInnes, Senior Manager, Trade Development with the Port of Halifax. 10:45, I'm sure a lot of you on the call know him already. We'll hear from Ben Forsyth, Export Development Executive for Seafood with Invest Nova Scotia, before moving on to the final questions at 10 o'clock. All right. So to officially kick things off, it is my pleasure to introduce the Honourable Kent Smith, Minister of the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, who will offer some welcome remarks. Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Sasha, and thank you everyone for joining us today for the second in a series of webinars and today we're talking about our European market overview for Nova Scotia seafood. To those who attended the first seminar on Spain and the Netherlands market, welcome back. And for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. It is great to have you with us, and a big thanks to all of you for working so hard to grow Nova Scotia's presence internationally. And the focus today is on two key European markets, France and Italy. And as we all know, Nova Scotia is renowned for our premium seafood, including lobster, scallops, snow crab, Atlantic halibut, oysters, and so much more. But as our global market shift and competition intensifies, diversifying both our markets and our products has become increasingly important. Exploring new opportunities across Europe is essential to the continued growth of our seafood industry. And France and Italy are among Europe's most vibrant and evolving seafood markets. In today's session, we'll explore the insights into market access, consumer preferences, and demographic trends that can help you better position your products in these regions. This webinar marks an important step in advancing our global strategy. It's not just about identifying new buyers, it's about understanding market dynamics, adapting to consumer demands, and building strong, lasting relationships. And I want to emphasize that you are not alone in this journey. The province is here to support you with market intelligence, trade initiatives, export readiness programs, and ongoing collaboration. We strongly encourage you to reach out, ask questions, and take full advantage of all the resources available to you. And listen, thank you once again for joining today's webinar. I'm excited about the opportunities and collaborations that will emerge from today's discussion. And together, we have the power to shape the future of Nova Scotia's seafood industry, one connection, one market, and one success at a time. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Minister Smith. We really appreciate you being here this morning.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Julie Ferguson-Sanidi, Trade Commissioner for the Mission to Canada to the EU based in Brussels. Julie will be providing a quick overview of the Trade Commissioner service and offering remarks on the EU. Julie, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sasha, and thank you, Minister Kent Smith, for launching this. I think this is a really timely webinar. We have been hearing a lot in Brussels and around Europe about how much more important Europe is becoming, and the European Union obviously is a major part of that. And I work at the Canada's mission to the European Union in Brussels, Belgium. I've been there for over 25 years, so I have a pretty good knowledge of the markets and what's going on. And our team in Brussels follows European regulations. We follow the market access issues, monitoring what's going on sort of at the EU level. And then I also work with our Trade Commissioner network across the European network. And as Minister Smith said, really diversification is becoming one of those key words. And I would add to that innovation as well. And so I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of the European market as a whole. I know my colleagues and Felipe are going to talk more specifically about some of the specific markets today. But if we look at the European market as a whole, Europe imports an awful lot of fish and seafood products. They import about $26 billion or euros worth, which is about 6 million tons of fish and seafood products. And they're really at only about a 40% self-sufficiency rate. So they're importing around 60% of what they need in order to meet the market demand. That being said, some of the main species that they are importing, I would say the vast majority of what people eat is becoming narrower. Salmon is probably number one, followed pretty closely by tropical shrimp, and then species like cod and Alaskan pollock for fish sticks and things like that would follow those. The good news is that Canadian fish and seafood comes into the EU at a 0% duty, thanks to CETA, which is great. But we're really only exporting about $430 million worth to the EU. It's our third market after the US, obviously, and China, and it's less than 3% of the total EU imports. So I do think that there's room to grow. I think that there are opportunities afforded to our companies in Europe. And they really take a wide variety of species and formats, and it kind of depends on the market. It depends on the consumer preferences. Depends a little bit on, obviously, disposable income as well. All of that sort of thing. And if you are new to the European market, I would strongly suggest coming to the Seafood Expo Global Show. It's held in Barcelona every year. Last year it was in May. Normally it's in April. Canada has about 600 square meters of floor space, and Nova Scotia takes a really big chunk of that. And it's great to see all of the participation from the Nova Scotia companies. And it really gives you an access not only to European buyers, but a lot of global buyers as well. In addition, we do have a number of sort of how to export fish and seafood guides that are available on the Aquaculture Canada website. And we had an excellent report done by a consultant in the market last year around sort of the EU retail market for fish and seafood and what that looks like. And that's available on the Seafood from Canada website as well. Please, as the minister said, and as Sasha said, don't hesitate to reach out to our Trade Commissioner network. We are here to help you. We're here to answer questions. We're here to problem solve, brainstorm with you to try and help you be successful in the market. If you reach out to any one of us, we're very happy to give you a hand. So with that, I'll hand it back to Sasha.
That's great. Thank you so much, Julie. Really appreciate the information on the EU overall. And it's great to know that the Trade Commissioner Service, as always, is there to support our Nova Scotia seafood exporters. Zooming into one of the key markets in the EU, one of the reasons we're here today, I'd now like to introduce Yannick Deilly, the Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada to France. Yannick will share a quick overview and an introduction to the French market. And Yannick, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Sasha, and thank you, everyone. I think you have a presentation of mine, and if you can exactly put it on it, that's fine. That's my first page, and then if we go straight to the second page, then we'll see the French imports. As Julie mentioned it, the EU is a very large importer of seafood, and out of the, I think, 24 billion euros she mentioned, well, France takes 7 billion euros, so a significant share, maybe 25% of it. And as Julie mentioned it, the country, France as a country, is self-sufficient only by maybe 40%, and that's mostly fresh fish. So in terms of frozen seafood, I would say most of it is imported. So if we look exactly at what is imported into France, and we have this kind of description here, and salmon, as Julie mentioned it, is the number one species with 26%, and then we have shrimp, and mostly these are tropical shrimp, which are imported frozen raw, and they're usually cooked in France and sold on the counter as a freshly cooked shrimp. And then we have cod, tuna, pollock, as Julie also mentioned it, and then we have scallops, where we have a significant market share. Crab, Norway lobster as 2%, and then other fish, a lot of sea fish, and then other shellfish and mollusks. So that's the description of what is imported into France. So, but yes, exactly. To the next slide. What does it mean? Well, where does Canada stand as a supplier? Well, French imports of seafood products, you see here, well, the very large suppliers like the UK, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Denmark, and well, at the number, if I remember well, 17, we have Canada as a supplier, at least according to the French import stats, at 0.77%. So less than 1% of the imports is actually supplied by Canada. So if we go to the next slide, there's a more detailed, description of what is imported. And to do that, I take, in fact, a kind of French publication that well, tends to be a little bit behind, but it gives more detail than the actual import stats. Why is it so? Well, Julie may have mentioned it, but well, in logistically speaking, a lot of the seafood that is imported into the EU goes through either the Netherlands or Belgium. Though sometimes they are cleared there, and it means that it makes the import stats and the export stats quite unreliable, because once they've been cleared in Belgium, they can go to France or Germany very easily. So the table on the left gives a better description of what is actually imported from Canada in France. And number one is scallops, and I must say most of these scallops come from Nova Scotia. And second is lobster. Live lobster is also imported from Nova Scotia, and processed lobster can be imported from other Atlantic provinces and also Nova Scotia. And then we have freshwater fish. You see the numbers there. But as you see, in fact, the very large lines, the very important lines are scallops and lobster. And then we have many smaller lines like freshwater fish, processed lobster, herring, fish roe, other shellfish, crab, other sea fish, fish oil, and hake, and even salmon that we import from BC from time to time. So over the last 3 years, at least the records we have, in fact, the stats show a little bit of a decrease, according to French customs, decrease in value. If we go to the next slide, that reflects the Canadian statistics, where there's also a decline, not exactly the same, and that's always the game with the stats, that they don't match each other, depending on who publishes the statistics. But exports to France, and if we take the Canadian on the left, Canadian seafood exports to the world, well, of course, the United States definitely number one with very close to 70%, and then China, Japan, UK, Hong Kong, Korea, and France. So France is there at a point, well, 0.92%, so a little bit less than 1% would be the first market in the EU, because now the UK has exited the EU. Definitely an important market, and definitely it could grow in importance if we wanted to, I must say. To the next slide. Well, just to finish it, the wrap up with the French market, Canada sells mainly to the food service sector. Here, tourism is up, but tourism is unbelievable and unbelievably high in France. You know, it's a tourism country. Canada enjoys a very good reputation as a supplier of seafood, and most Canadian fisheries are MSC certified, which is good. And while several European fisheries, they're definitely not sustainable, although they continue to use their own fish, to consume their own fish, they know when you ask them that these fisheries are not sustainable. But does it matter to consumers? That's a good question, because well, we sometimes don't see that kind of appeal that we would expect. However, well, our competitors, the UK, Ireland, Norway, Scotland, Iceland, and the USA, they heavily invest in promotion at the retail level, at the food service level. And well, we have something new since the EU and the US have agreed on a trade deal this summer. The US products may become more competitive because the US has obtained preferential access for lobster. So it's not enforced yet, but once it is enforced, they're going to be refunded for the duties paid as from the 1st of August. So live lobster should enter the EU at 0%, also the same situation as Canada. And we have a problem with the identity of the Canadian offer. We should be more, I must say, we should go more with the Canadian flag when it comes to Canadian seafood. And that's the end of my part. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Yannick. We really appreciate your insights into the France market and highlighted some of the opportunities. And we look forward to hearing more on the opportunities that exist within France when Felipe presents later on. We'll now shift things over to Italy. We are fortunate to be joined by Kamer Hamid, Agriculture Councillor and Trade Commissioner with the Embassy of Canada to Italy, Alternative Permanent Representative to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, and Permanent Mission of Canada to the Food and Agriculture Agencies of the UN, as well as Anna Sacco, Trade Commissioner Assistant, Agriculture and Processed Foods, Fish and Seafood at the Embassy of Canada to Italy. It's a very busy time for both of them right now, but we're very thankful that they could join us to introduce themselves and share any remarks that they have. So, Kamer and Anna, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Sasha. As Julie indicated, for the EU, Italy is one of the world's top seafood importers and represents a dynamic and high-value opportunity for Nova Scotia's seafood sector. It's a strategic market with a high demand but limited domestic production. And again, as Julie said, the lack of tariffs presents a great opportunity. Success in Italy is likely going to depend on strategic partnerships, tailored packaging, and creating trust through clear emphasis on Canadian origin and sustainability. And I believe Yannick is presenting as well for the Italy market, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll let Anna do a little introduction before we hand it over to Yannick.
Yes. No, it was basically to offer any other side information to what Yannick prepared. I think both markets are very similar. Again, we see very little Canadian products coming into Italy, and there is room for growth there. We see that, and perhaps later on, Davide, who's got the direct experience, can talk about those opportunities as well. We had the pleasure of hosting the seafood mission last February, so we saw some activity happening there with connections being made. So we really look forward to helping those grow here.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kamer and Anna. Again, really, really thankful that you could join us this morning. And we will hear a lot more on the market in Italy and opportunities when Felipe presents. And speaking of Felipe, next up on the agenda is Felipe Macias, Nova Scotia Seafood's in-market consultant for the EU, who will present on key seafood market trends in France and Italy, including consumer preferences and emerging opportunities for our seafood exporters. Some of you may have met Felipe before. He was with us at Seafood Expo Global at the Nova Scotia Seafood booth back in May, or met him on your own trade travels. But we've been working together since January of this year, I believe, and he has been a wealth of knowledge for us. We're really thrilled that he can share his insights with you today. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Felipe.
Okay, well, thank you, Sasha. Thank you very much, Minister and Trade Commissioners, Nova Scotia Seafood and Invest Nova Scotia teams. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. With this presentation, I would like to add some more useful and practical information about the markets of Italy and France, and I will also try to avoid repeating some of the so valuable insights that have already been shared here today. So before exploring the Italian and the French markets, I will begin with a brief overview of the European market to provide some context on its size, structure, and key opportunities for sustainable, high-quality seafood. The EU is a market of 450 million consumers. That's the scale we're talking about. It is the world's largest seafood importer, taking in nearly 12 million tons every year. And yet, the EU is heavily import dependent. Almost 70% of what Europeans eat comes from outside their waters. It is a market that lives and breathes quality and sustainability, and where buyers expect proof and not promises. European consumers place strong trust in certification. If it is MSC or ASC, it sells. But Europe isn't just one market. It is a mosaic of tastes. The North loves cod and herring, and the South prefers octopus, hake, and shellfish. Supermarkets and food service rule the game. They set the standards, control the volume, and define what's premium. And finally, a key advantage for Nova Scotia, Canada enjoys tariff-free access under CETA. Imports, next please. Imports in Europe are highly concentrated. Just 5 markets handle more than half of all seafood trade. The system is heavily regulated. This isn't a place for improvisation, and rules matter here. Buyers focus on traceability, innovation, and convenience. They want safe, smart, and easy-to-use products. There's a clear preference for wild and natural seafood, and the market is changing fast. Digitalization and e-commerce are redefining how seafood is bought and sold. Private labels and major retailers dictate the standards: quality, packaging, sustainability. And finally, premium seafood is gaining momentum. Consumers are trading up. So what's the size of the EU market? Every year, Europe consumes around 8 million tons of seafood. That's figure combining imports, domestic catches, aquaculture production, and minus what is exported. It is a market that never stops moving, driven by constant demand across retail, food service, and processing. Behind these numbers lies an ecosystem of ports, logistics, and regulations that make the EU one of the most sophisticated seafood markets in the world. Here, next slide, we can see the evolution of total seafood imports into the European Union over the last 5 years. After peaking in 2021, imports declined slightly due to logistics disruptions and inflation across Europe, but volumes have remained stable since 2023 and now are showing signs of recovery. And this confirms that overall seafood demand in the EU remains strong, particularly for high value and sustainable products, where Nova Scotia supplies are well positioned. Now, let's look at the main importers. Spain clearly leads with around 15% of all EU seafood imports, and then come France and Denmark with about 11%, and Germany and the Netherlands both close to 10%, as well as Italy. Italy is around 10, a little bit less than 10%. And together, the first 5 markets make up over half of all EU seafood imports, the real heart of the European seafood trade. Next slide shows the top suppliers to the EU by value. Norway dominates, followed by the UK, China, Iceland, and Morocco. And Canada, as has been said here before, ranks 17th with 1.3 market share. Modest in size, but strong in reputation for quality, traceability, and sustainable sourcing. Here we can see Canada's seafood export performance to the EU over the past 5 years. The curve has now stabilized. 2024 figures show a moderate recovery, indicating that demand remains solid, particularly for high-value species like lobster, snow crab, and scallops. This is an important reminder that consistency in supply, certification, and clear labeling remain key factors for maintaining market share in Europe. And finally, this slide highlights which Nova Scotia species the EU imports most. Lobster dominates, followed by cold water shrimp, halibut, hake, and sea scallops. It confirms strong demand for high-quality cold water species and opportunities to grow beyond lobster, with scallops, halibut, and redfish. Okay, now let's jump into France. Why France? Because it is Europe's second largest seafood market, dynamic, demanding, and deeply connected to gastronomy. It is a premium destination where chefs and consumers alike value quality, origin, and freshness. And crucially, it is a strong importer of North Atlantic species, halibut, lobster, scallops, exactly the kind of products that resonate with French buyers. France is one of Europe's seafood powerhouses. It represents around 11% of total EU seafood imports. When we look at where that seafood comes from, the top 5 suppliers, the UK, Sweden, Netherlands, Spain, and Denmark, together account for just over half of imports. The UK leads with almost 19%, thanks to its proximity and strong whitefish and shellfish trade. Sweden and the Netherlands follow, both key for cold water species and re-exports within the European Union. And this means that while competition is strong and large, there's still space for premium non-EU origins like Nova Scotia, especially when we highlight sustainability, cold Atlantic origin, and reliability. So let's take a quick look at what drives the French seafood market. On the landing side, on your left, the stars are scallops, followed by monkfish, sole, squid, and cuttlefish, all species with strong local roots and high culinary value. But when it comes to imports, France turns outward. Salmon clearly dominates, followed by shrimp, cod shrimp, tuna, and cod. This shows a balanced but opportunity-rich market, local production on one side and heavy reliance on premium imports on the other side. In the next slide, we can clearly see France's strong appetite for seafood. Year after year, French consumers eat significantly more fish and shellfish than EU average, around 33 kilos per person compared to about 23 in Europe overall. The trend is stable, even slightly increasing, which shows that seafood remains an essential part of the French diet, both at home and in restaurants. In short, this is a market with solid demand and consistent consumption habits. How French buy? Because this tells us a lot about the habits and priorities. Where? Well, they mostly buy in supermarkets, which represent around 70% of purchases. But don't forget that traditional fishmongers still play a key role, especially for fresh, whole fish. Markets remain part of local culture, and online sales are growing, particularly for frozen and gourmet food products. How do they buy? Decisions are driven by freshness, origin, and now increasingly by price per kilo. Consumers also appreciate convenience, easy to cook, ready to eat options, and they show a strong trust in eco labels like MSC or ASC. When? Consumption peaks in December, accounting for up to 20% of annual spending, with strong demand during Christmas and Epiphany for oysters, scallops, and salmon. Easter and summer also bring seasonal boosts, especially along the coast. And how often? French consumers buy seafood once or twice a week, more than EU average. They prefer small pack sizes, rely heavily on private labels for frozen and canned fish, and are now embracing chilled fillets and ready-to-eat formats, showing a market that values both quality and convenience. In these pictures, you can see how the French really buy their seafood, a mix of markets, fishmongers, and supermarkets. Freshness and presentation are key. Even in large stores, the offer feels personal and seasonal, like this spray campaign you can see here on your right. It is all about trust, quality, and tradition, values that still define the French seafood experience. What are the most consumed species in France? When it comes to what the French eat, the picture is very clear. Tuna leads by far. It is versatile, affordable, and popular in both canned and fresh formats. Then salmon and cod, which dominate at the premium end. Shrimp follows closely, easy to cook, perfect for everyday meals, while mussels, Alaska pollock, scallops, and oysters reflect the strong coastal tradition and taste for variety. Altogether, it is a market that balances everyday practicality with culinary sophistication. In France, tuna and salmon dominate, but it is the formats that tell the real story here. Tuna, found in every cupboard, mainly canned, natural or in oil, but also fresh for steaks and tartare. It is the go-to option for quick, simple meals. Salmon is much more diversified. Fresh fillets, smoked slices, ready-to-eat trays. It is a premium, elegant and deeply linked to festive moments. Together, they show how the French combine practicality and pleasure. When it comes to shrimp and scallops, the French know exactly what they want: taste and practicality. Shrimp is the ultimate convenience product. Cooked, peeled, frozen, or chilled, perfect for salads, aperitif, or pasta. It is an everyday favorite, quick to prepare. And scallops, on the other hand, are the symbol of refinement. Sold fresh or frozen, with or without roe, they are a highlight. They are a highlight of festive meals and restaurant menus. And finally, I think there are a few or one or two oyster producers among us today. So let me share a few insights about oysters in France. Well, in France, oysters are mainly sold live, most often in wooden boxes of 12 for 24 or for 48, clearly labeled by origin, caliber, and quality grade, like Fin de Clair or Spécial de Clair. Consumption peaks during the winter, festive season, especially Christmas and New Year, but premium restaurants now serve year-round, responding to growing demand for fresh seafood. The French market favors Casostrea gigas, the Pacific oyster, but there's also renewed interest in the native flat oyster, the Ostrea edulis, for its unique flavor and heritage. American and Canadian oysters, often larger, meatier, and slightly sweeter, could stand out if presented as a high-end, clean water, cold climate product. So, while France remains the traditional market, there might be some room for new origins that combine authenticity, premium quality, and strong storytelling, exactly what Nova Scotia could deliver. So let's focus on some Nova Scotia species sold in France, starting with live lobster. In France, live lobster dominates the fine dining scene, especially around Christmas, New Year, and Easter. It is a premium product, mainly supplied through importers with tanks near Rungis Market in Paris. Frozen lobster, in formats like tails, halves, or claw meat, serves the retail and food service sectors via companies like Picard, Thirier, Davigel, Pomona, or Cisco. Small packs for homes and bulk for catering. Simply put, in France, live lobster means prestige, frozen lobster means practicality. Scallops. When it comes to scallops, France has one of Europe's most dynamic markets, and Nova Scotia's scallops plays an important role, complementing domestic production with consistent year-round supply. The main formats are IQF meats from U10 to U30, dry, without added water, and frozen blocks for processors, or ready-to-cook retail trays of 6 to 10 pieces. These products go mainly to mid and high-end HoReCa, premium frozen retail, ready meal manufacturers, and food service. In France, scallops are a winter classic, especially during Christmas and New Year, with Nova Scotia offering the quality and reliability chefs and distributors value most. Snow crab. Snow crab holds a special place in France's festive seafood culture. It is sold mostly as clusters, sections, or claws, cooked or frozen, and is seen as a premium delicacy for Christmas and New Year. You will find it both in fine dining and in premium retail formats, often presented for easy sharing or special occasions. It is small but growing niche, elegant, indulgent, and perfectly aligned with Nova Scotia's image of quality. Cold water shrimp. Um, it occupies a solid niche in France's frozen seafood market. They are mainly used in retail, salads, and ready meals, offering convenience and clean, natural taste. Competing with tropical shrimp, their main strength lies in their sustainability credentials as MSC certification, something that French consumers and retailers increasingly value. Redfish in France is used primarily by processors for breaded products and as a base for surimi. At the same time, it is present in frozen retail and affordable whitefish alternative, offering good value and steady availability throughout the year. It is a quiet, reliable species in the market, versatile and appreciated for its mild taste and firm texture. And finally, halibut. Halibut in France is a niche premium product, usually exported as IQF loins or steaks, and occasionally fresh loins when logistics permit. It is highly valued by chefs and fishmongers for its delicate flavor and firm texture. And you will also find it occasionally in frozen premium retail lines, positioned as a sustainable, refined whitefish alternative. So what are the market trends in France? France remains one of the most dynamic seafood markets in Europe, mature but constantly evolving. Consumption patterns reflect both strong attachment to seafood and a rapid shift in how it is purchased, prepared, and valued. The combination of premium quality expectations, demand for convenience, and growing awareness of sustainability creates a fertile ground for innovation and for differentiating premium imported seafood. So French consumers increasingly reward sustainability. Over 60% check eco labels like MSC, ASC, or others, giving Nova Scotia a real edge thanks to our certified and traceable fisheries. At the same time, smaller households drive demand for portioned and small packs. And altogether, these trends open new opportunities for Nova Scotia products in the French market. So next slide, please. How does Canada perform in France? Here we can see how Canada's seafood exports to France have evolved over the past 5 years. After a peak in 2020, volumes declined, mostly due to logistics and post-pandemic adjustments. But what's interesting is that in 2024 shows there's a clear recovery. It is not just a rebound in numbers, it is also a sign that French buyers are re-engaging with trusted suppliers, particularly those offering premium sustainable seafood. And that's good news for Nova Scotia because our species and certifications fit exactly where the French market is heading. What are the most imported Canadian species in France? When it comes to Canadian seafood in France, lobster clearly leads the way. It represents over a third of total imports, including both live and processed products. Scallops follow with around a quarter of that total, showing how much France values premium shellfish. And then hake at 11% completes the picture, mostly linked to processing and food service use. So overall, France's demand is concentrated on high-value cold water species, where Canada and Nova Scotia in particular already enjoy strong recognition. Then lobster really stands out. It's Canada's seafood export to France. Nearly 1/5 lobsters sent to the EU goes to this market, split almost equally between frozen and live, as you can see here. Next slide, please. Here we can see that lobster really dominates in France, and Canada consistently supplies around 30% of France's total lobster imports, a solid share, even as volumes fluctuate slightly year to year. This shows the strength and resilience of Canadian lobster in a highly competitive market and the trust French buyers place in its quality and consistency. Well, here I'm going to show you some pictures of some products sold in the supermarkets in France. These are great examples of how Canadian lobster is positioned in French retail: elegant, practical, and premium. You will see both cooked and raw formats, usually around 300 to 500 grams. And it is a product that feels special, but it's still easy to enjoy. Here, sorry, the previous one, please. Sorry. Thank you. Here we see how French retailers also highlight lobster portions, tails and claws, both raw and cooked. And this is another proof that Nova Scotia lobster could fit beautifully with French consumer habits: premium, practical, and ready to impress. And next one. You can see here that lobster is also the star in soups, whiskers, and spreads. They are very popular in French retail. And these ready-to-eat formats make lobster accessible year-round, reinforcing its premium and yet familiar image. So don't think of lobster just as a whole or even tails or claws or knuckles. Think of lobster also as soups and biscuits or spreads that are very popular in France. So to finish with France, what might be the real opportunities in France? Well, France offers a profitable but demanding opportunity for Nova Scotia. To size it, exporters should focus on frozen, ready-to-cook formats that match French gastronomy: tails, claws, and cooked lobster portions. Success here depends on building partnerships with local importers and distributors to secure cold chain logistics and reach the premium HoReCa and gourmet retail segments. Timing exports around seasonal peaks like Christmas and Easter will help maximize visibility and returns. Sorry, next one. Sorry. We'll skip this one, please. Let's go to this one. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So both redfish and silver hake show promising growth potential in France. They fit well into fillet and portion controlled formats, ideal for food manufacturers and frozen retail chains. Demand here is driven by HoReCa and major retailers like Picard, Carrefour, and Auchan, who are looking for reliable, sustainable whitefish options. And there's good opportunity to develop private label or co-packed products with key processors and distributors. So don't forget about the option of partnering with distributors and processors for private label. Next, please. There are also some opportunities for niche products like snow crab and cold water. For snow crab, the key is to target premium and Asian fusion restaurants and chefs looking for sustainable, high-quality shellfish for festive menus. And for cold water shrimp, focus on ready meal producers and premium retail, and position both species under the wild, sustainable North Atlantic message to attract eco-conscious buyers and stand out for mainstream products. So just make the difference. Talk about wild, sustainable, and North Atlantic. That's very, very important. So next, and going back to oysters, well, there might be a niche potential, small but interesting. Nova Scotia could help cover off-season demand when local French production slows down. The distinct Atlantic flavor and sustainability story appeal to chefs and eco-conscious consumers. The best prospects are in gastronomic restaurants, oyster bars, and premium retailers who look for novelty and traceability. Well, it could be a small segment at this moment, but there's a growing curiosity for imported cold water oysters from new origins like Canada or Nova Scotia. And finally, what would be our recommendations for France? To sum up, selling in France means being strategic. We need to segment lobster, separating live for Oreca from processed formats for retail. We should also focus on the festive season, when demand peaks and quality matters most. And finally, develop more processed formats, value-added, ready-to-cook products that appeal to French consumers and top retailers. So in short, precision, timing, and innovation are key to succeed in France. And finally, there's a real opportunity here. By positioning some underused species smartly, like snow crab or cold water shrimp, we can tap into France's growing appetite for sustainable North Atlantic seafood. We should work with large food service and catering groups such as Sodexo or Compass, who value reliability and certified supply. And above all, let's educate importers and distributors, highlighting Nova Scotia's strengths, which are sustainability, cold water quality, and trust. France is ready for new origins. We just need to tell the story well. And that's France. Let's jump now into Italy. So why Italy? Italy is a strong and consistent seafood market and relies heavily on imports. Consumption is high throughout the year, with clear festive peaks around Christmas, New Year, and Easter. There's a real culture of fresh counters, traditional fishmongers, alongside with large retailers like Metro and Mar, serving the food service sector. And most importantly, it is a clear fit for Nova Scotia. Live lobster for celebration, premium frozen formats for gourmet retail, and high-quality scallops and whitefish for chefs and manufacturers. So Italy combines tradition, volume, and appreciation for quality. Italy is one of the EU's largest seafood importers. It accounts for almost 10% of total EU imports. The market is competitive but open. The top 5 suppliers, Spain, Sweden, the Netherlands, Denmark, and France, cover about half of the imports. Spain leads with just over 20%, mostly thanks to proximity and strong distribution networks. But this also means there's room for new players, especially for those offering consistent quality, certified origin, and reliability. In short, Nova Scotia can compete in Italy, not by volume, but by value and trust. Here we can see Italy's seafood profile, and it tells us a lot as well. On the left, local landings are mostly small coastal species, anchovies, shrimp, clams, nothing that competes directly with Canada. On the right, we see where the real opportunity lies. Imports dominate the value side. Salmon, tuna, shrimp, squid, octopus, all high volume imported products. So the message is simple here. Italy depends on imports to meet demand, and that creates space for premium, high-quality seafood from Nova Scotia. Italy is a strong seafood country, and you can see it here. While consumption is in most EU markets stays around 23 kilos per person, Italy remains. There you are. Okay, thank you. Fine. So, how do the Italians buy seafood? Well, most at the supermarket, which now takes about 2/3 of all seafood sales. But don't forget, traditional fishmongers still matter a lot, especially for fresh and local species. Freshness, origin, and traceability are key. Italians really want to know where the fish come from. At the same time, they are price conscious, particularly on frozen lines. Demand peaks during Christmas, Easter, and summer, when lobster, cod, and shellfish shine. And throughout the year, they eat seafood 2 to 3 times a week, small portions, often private label, and increasingly ready to cook. Here in this next slide, you will see some pictures and how the Italians like shopping. Whether you are in Milan, Naples, or Palermo, or any other big city in Italy, you will find seafood everywhere, in big supermarket counters, traditional fishery, and open-air markets. Presentation really matters here. The product must look fresh, abundant, and inviting. And that visual trust is key. Italians still prefer to see, touch, and choose their fish in person. It is not just about buying food, it's part of the culture, part of the weekend ritual. So, what are the most consumed species in Italy? When we look at what Italians actually eat, the picture is very Mediterranean. At the top, you find gillhead, seabream, and European sea bass, both farmed locally and part of everyday cuisine. Then come mussels and salmon, which are now fully mainstream across retail and food service. And farther down, you see hake, swordfish, and octopus, all deeply rooted in regional traditions. So it is a market that blends local favorites with imported staples. Here we see two of Italy's seafood staples, hake and swordfish. Hake is everywhere in fillets, breaded formats, even ready to cook portions. It is affordable, family friendly, and a perfect everyday fish. And swordfish, on the other hand, is more of a premium traditional favorite, popular in southern regions and sold both fresh and smoked. Salmon is seen as a healthy, versatile option, eaten all year round and available in every possible format: smoked, marinated, fillets, even ready to cook. Both Atlantic farmed salmon and wild species like sockeye have a strong presence, with brands competing on origin, sustainability, and convenience. So let's focus a little bit more on some Nova Scotia species. How do they perform in Italy? Okay, let's talk now lobster, one of Nova Scotia's icons. In Italy, live lobster is all about prestige, fine dining, coastal restaurants, Christmas, Easter, the big moments. But the real growth is in frozen lobster. You see it in gourmet stores and with premium distributors like Mar or Dabigel. IQF tails, claw meat, ready to cook formats, that's where the momentum is. So if we are talking scale and reach, frozen lobster is clearly the door to Italy. And now scallops. Italians love them. You will find them everywhere in fine dining, in frozen gourmet retail, even ready to bake at home. The half-shell format is a favorite for restaurants, while IQF meats work perfectly for catering and industry. And of course, demand spikes every festive season: Christmas, New Year, Valentine's Day. So yes, scallops have a solid, elegant niche, but a wide reach too. Snow crab. In Italy, snow crab is almost all imported frozen, and that's perfectly fine. That's how chefs want it. So frozen clusters, legs, claws, cooked, glazed, and ready to serve. You will see it in premium food service, hotels, banquets, seafood restaurants, and even in processors for salads and antipasti. So while there's no live market for here, frozen snow crab holds a strong, elegant position, reliable and high-end. And finally, cold water shrimp is very versatile. They are sold frozen, peeled, cooked, ready for pasta, salads, or seafood mixes. Italians love them for their convenience and their clean, natural taste. They compete with tropical shrimp, yes, but they win on flavor and sustainability. It is a product that fits perfectly in both retail and food service. So next, let's have a look at the market trends in Italy. In Italy, people eat fish often, but not in big quantities. It's all about frequency over volume. Fresh, light meals several times a week. Now, fish still leads. Of course, it is part of the culture. But we are seeing a clear shift. Frozen, canned, and ready-to-use seafood are gaining ground fast. And then salmon. Consumption of salmon has more than doubled in just a few years. Italians are becoming more open to foreign species and convenient formats. So in short, smaller portions, more often, and easier to prepare. That's where the opportunity is. So when it comes to where Italians buy the seafood, large retail has taken the lead. About 68% of seafood sales now go through supermarkets. They are powerful, organized, and growing every year. But Italians still love the local fishmonger. There is trust there, freshness, a familiar face, story behind the fish. That tradition still matters. And finally, labeling and origin. People really pay attention to where the fish comes from, so how it is caught and how it is farmed. That sense of transparency and traceability is a strong selling point in this market. So how Canada is performing in Italy? As we can see here, there's a clear trend. After a small dip in 2023, imports have bounced back strongly, reaching over 2 million kilos this year. That's not just a recovery, that's renewed confidence in Canadian seafood. Italian buyers now know the quality, they trust the origin, and they are coming back for more. So 2024 marks a real turning point. Canada is back on the radar. When we look at what Italy actually buys from Canada, there's one clear star: lobster. It represents almost 70% of total imports, including live, frozen, and meat preparations. And then much smaller volumes: Pacific salmon at around 4%, followed by clams, cod, and a bit of hake. So really, lobster carries the flag for Canadian seafood in Italy. It is the product that everyone knows and the one that opened the doors for others. About 12% of Canada's exports to the EU go to Italy, and most of that is lobster. It is not just the product, it's the pillar of our seafood trade. Roughly 3/4 of it goes live, another quarter frozen, and a growing share is as processed meat and preparation. So lobster is not only leading, it is also diversifying, opening new doors in retail and food service in Italy. And here, next, we can really see how lobster defines Canada's role in Italy. Back in 2020, Canada supplied more than half of all lobster imported into the country, over 50%. But since then, the competition has grown, especially from the US and Northern Europe, pushing Canada's share down to around a quarter today. Still, Canada remains a key and trusted supplier, and the message is clear. There's room to recover ground, particularly with better branding, logistics, and promotion. So next, what would be opportunities for you in Italy? Well, there's some products with high potential. In Italy, lobster represents again a true growth opportunity, not because it is new, but because the market lacks premium, frozen, and ready-to-cook options. Nova Scotia can fill this gap by offering consistent, high-quality, traceable lobster in formats tailored to Italian cuisine, like smaller portions, elegant packaging, and ready-to-serve products. The key is to focus on reliability, presentation, and portion control. giving chefs and gourmet retailers a product that combines luxury with practicality, something that the Italian market still needs. And there are also some products or some species that could be interesting for the Italian market. Scallops are a promising growth segment for Nova Scotia. They perform really well in fine dining and frozen gourmet retail. And what are the formats that work best? Well, dry IQF meats, chef packs, and small retail trays for festive times. And the key message here, they are premium North Atlantic scallops, better yield, more natural taste, and no comparison with Asian frozen products. Snow crab. Snow crab is still new in Italy, but awareness is growing fast. It is being seen more and more as a luxury shellfish for festive occasions. The best formats? Well, cooked clusters, frozen legs, and IQF claw meat for gourmet salads and pasta. And here's the key. Position it as a sustainable, easier alternative to king crab. Elegant, practical, and premium. Next will be cold water shrimp. Still small volume, but it's gaining ground fast, especially among health-conscious and sustainable consumers. It competes with tropical shrimp, but wins on MSC certification and a clean, natural taste. The most successful formats will be cooked, peeled, IQF shrimp, and small retail packs. So the message here is also simple: sustainability, texture, and ready-to-eat appeal. And finally, oysters. Well, domestic production, as mentioned before, is very limited, and about 70% of imports come from France and 30% from the Netherlands. So yes, there might be space for a Canadian origin, but it's a small niche. The key opportunity lies in special moments: Christmas, Valentine's Day, premium venues, and in highlighting very well the origin in cold Atlantic flavor and traceability. And also, any Canadian entry must compete on price and logistics, since the market is dominated by European suppliers who are geographically closer. So what will be the final recommendation for the Italian market? Strategy for Italy should, you should consider some things. First, plan logistics smartly. Use Genoa or Venice and keep small buffer near Milan or Verona to react fast when demand peaks. Second, focus on value-added frozen, cooked lobster, IQF scallops, portioned cod or halibut formats that fit Italian habits and win chefs' trust. And third, sell with seasonality. Christmas, Easter, summer on the coast, those are your golden windows. If we combine smart logistics, the right product formats, and perfect timing, Canada could make its mark in Italy's premium seafood. And finally, to succeed in Italy, there are three other things that matter above all. Build strong local partnerships. Work hand in hand with trusted importers and co-packers in Veneto and Emilia-Romagna. That's how you adapt labels, specs, and meet Italian expectations. Prioritize the right species. Lead with lobster, cod, scallops, and halibut, while positioning other species like snow crab, redfish, and cold water shrimp as niche sustainable germs. And finally, position Nova Scotia as a premium cold North Atlantic waters, certified sustainability and authentic Canadian quality. And that's the story Italy wants to hear, and the one that can set Nova Scotia seafood apart. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Felipe. It's a lot of information to take in on two great markets. And, I'm sure that there's a lot of questions that have come up from that. So it's a great opportunity to move into our first question and answer period. We have Felipe on the call, and I believe we have all of our most of our trade commissioners. I see Anna is still on, Kamer, Julie, Yannick. All right. So we'll open up to any questions. Once again, please either raise your hand or leave your questions in the chat. I'll kick off with one question that I have, Felipe. Your presentation focused a lot, or mentioned the importance of supermarkets and fishmongers and sort of that in-person buying experience for consumers. How are e-commerce and online sales evolving in Europe? Is there a lot going on there?
Well, I would say that it's growing, but it's growing slowly. I mean, it is coming, especially for younger generations. I mean, we see it all over the place. I mean, not only in Italy, on France, everywhere. I mean, we see young people going lesser to fishmongers, and demanding smaller packs, convenience packs. And for these people, it's easier to buy online. Okay. But not only for convenience, there are also some consumers that rely on very specialized retailers, online retailers that sell very fresh and very high quality products. But because they are based in different places, different cities in Italy or in France, they just buy online because they want a very specific quality. So it's growing, uh, not very fast, because we see in both markets that people or consumers still rely on fishmongers, and they like going to the supermarkets. But well, it's something that we should not forget, and try to think of for Nova Scotia, what kind of products or what formats would be good if we want to partner with an online retailer. Okay, that's convenience here is very important.
Right. And Yannick, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, in terms of online sales, well, I must say seafood is not exactly a product that sells very well online, especially fresh seafood, of course. What, of course, Felipe mentioned, and definitely there's a lot of home delivery of meals, and that in Paris, it's absolutely everywhere. You see these bikes, delivering meals all over the place. So you see there's a kind of trend. So it means probably that there would be more. The food service market would increase a little bit more, not only due to tourism, as I mentioned before, but also because of domestic consumption of prepared meals that are prepared somewhere. So how can we address that kind of a new demand of home delivery? That's a good question, because usually, you remember these meals are not exactly expensive. Usually they're on the cheap side. But this would have to be worked with the food service distributors themselves. Probably they know that this trend is here, and definitely it's here to stay. There's a lot of young people that don't visit supermarkets anymore, and as Felipe mentioned it, it's an issue, because if they don't go to the supermarket, then what can you sell to them? That's a good question.
May I add that probably Davide afterwards could help us with understanding how it works in the Italian market.
Absolutely.
Related to the e-commerce is now they start some companies to do e-commerce for fresh product and food products, but it's still a niche, and mostly for rare products, very nice, like truffle, very very specifically product that you cannot find in the supermarket or in normal shops, so you can buy online. But for the all day food, the numbers are really really small.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you all for the insights. I don't see any questions in the chat, so maybe we'll jump into our break. At this point, I'd say let's take a 5-minute break and be back online for 10:20. So if anyone wants to get up, stretch their legs, grab a coffee, now's the time to do it, and we'll see everyone back in 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, everyone, welcome back. Hope everybody had a good short break. Just want to take a moment. Awesome, Davide, you're there, great. All right, so I think we are set to keep moving along with our webinar today. We'll dive back into things by next, moving on to Davide Massetti, who is a business developer with SQS Network, an Italian seafood importer based in Brescia. With deep connections in the retail and food service industry, Davide has joined us today to share his experience with Nova Scotia and Canadian seafood in Italy, share some insights on what they look for when working with seafood suppliers, and advice that he may have for how to build strong connections with partners and markets. So without further ado, Davide, welcome. It's over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. What I can say for the Italian market is the perception of Canadian and also Nova Scotia product is that are considered a high quality product, as you can imagine, for the Canadian image that there is not only in Italy but also in Europe about the clean natural water, the cool water, pristine water. So the perception of Canadian product is always a high quality product. Italian market is more similar to France, and this difference between Spain and Netherlands. Italian market is more a market of finished end product. So difference to Spain and Netherlands, where they are more reprocessing country. In Italy, it's very difficult to find a factory that works like whole fish, because the cost of the labor is really high. So it's very difficult to find factories that reprocess the fish. So it's more a market of end product like fillets, meat, etc. And what is that type of product that are not come directly end product, they are worked like in Netherlands. That is one of the biggest country of importing for Italy for this reason, and also Spain. So when you see a lot of lobster that are imported in Spain, a lot of that come to Italy because Spain is also an hub for like groupage truck that comes to Italy that also product from North Africa, etc. Big importer put all together and go to Italy for the distributors. What I can say for the Canadian companies, important things to build a relationship with the Italian customer, because this is a thing that I said also when we did the Canadian mission in Rome. Sometimes what I see from the Canadian companies that come to Europe, not only Italy but all Europe, to find a way to sell some product that they can for example US cannot buy, or they don't want to buy. For example, for me the big example is the snow crab. When United States then don't want to pay a price for snow crab, they push to sell the product in Europe. Then people work a lot to introduce a new product, because snow crab in Europe is not so well known. When people work a lot to introduce a new product, and then when maybe United States or Asia or some other country come back and buy and pay more the product, the product disappears. So all the work doing maybe in a year, 2 years to promote a product is time lost, and then people when lost this time is a loss of also of trust in the companies and in a sector like Canada, for example, for this time spent for nothing. Another things that that is important to highlight is that Europe is not a country, is a more country that in altogether. So there is a rules for Europe that all the country follow, and then there are some usually more strict rules for every country. For example, in Italy there are some rules more strict than the other countries. For example, if you want to import a product in Italy, you need to have an Italian label. Otherwise, you cannot import a product in Italy because or you have to reprocess only a few cases, but if you want to import a product in Italy, you need to have an Italian label. So a suggestion they give also to all the producers is, if it's possible, try to do a multi-language label. That's a simple thing. I think it's not so difficult with more, I don't know, English, French, Spanish, and Italian. So you are able to export everywhere with no problem, and you have no problems with your export. Going deeply to the product, as everybody know, the main product importing from Canada, especially Nova Scotia in Italy, is the lobster. Lobster are divided. The most consumption in Italy are divided in for food service, raw netted lobster. So Italy and Spain are the only two countries that buy raw netted lobster, and whole cooked netted is almost nothing in Italy. Like 99% is raw netted lobster for food service. So this is a market for the restaurants during all the summer that start from April till October. This the season of the summer in Italy among all the regions. And the woro netted, the cooked popsicle, that is the only product for the retail. So it is the only main product that is sell in the retail, because it's an historical product that always is always been in the supermarket. And the meat for the industry, so for filling pasta, for soup, for ready meals, so all the like means CK for the lobster. These are the main products for the lobster. For the other items, there are volumes, but it's difficult to have a big consumption, like scallops, that now is really expensive. So it's difficult to find importer for an high value container like this, with the price of today. And for the other ones, like snow crab, is very limited. So now all the sales come through some bigger importer in Northern Europe. And for the shrimps, for the cold water shrimps, there is a lot of consumption for the whole raw and for the cooked and peeled. But the competition is with Northern Europe, so you have to face with the Northern Europe companies that are really strong in the market, and the difference is different for an Italian company to buy few pallets and then order a container. So you have to imagine that they have to wait 40 days, they have to pay in advance. So there is some difference that can help the North European companies against the Canadian one. If you have some question specifically, I'm here if you want.
Great. Thank you so much, Davide. We really appreciate it. Between you and the representatives that joined us on Monday from La Serena and Scanfisk in Spain, we've been fortunate to have these in-market insights from buyers and retailers and importers. And I know it's very valuable information for the companies on the call. So we'll keep an eye for any questions that come in the chat, but thank you. Our next speaker is Rob McGinnis, Senior Manager Trade Development at the Port of Halifax. And Rob will be sharing insights on logistics and distribution via the Port of Halifax and how they can be a partner in exporting Nova Scotia seafood to European markets and markets worldwide. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Just delighted to be here today. I'm going to share my screen with you just momentarily here. There we are. So, good morning. I hope everyone can see that. Is that good? Okay. So just a little bit of introduction. The Halifax Port Authority is mandated under the Canada Marine Act to administer certain marine commercial facilities at the Port of Halifax, including the Halifax Grain Elevator, ocean terminals, which handles bulk and general and cruise cargo, Richmond terminals, which handles bulk and general cargo, and then the two container terminals, the Fairview Cove and the South End Container Terminal, which are both operated by PSA Halifax, which is the world's largest terminal operating company under a long-term lease agreement with the HPA. So my office, the HPA, leads the port's marketing efforts with cargo owners, freight forwarders, and ship lines to attract new business. And in noting that, we are, of course, a major economic driver in the province, not only for jobs, but also when you think about it, Halifax, we're very lucky in Nova Scotia because not all jurisdictions have a ocean port that they can count on, that they have. You know, when you think about it, Ontario, for instance, they don't have an ocean port. So in many respects, we consider the Port of Halifax to be Ontario's port for certain markets. So we're very lucky here in Nova Scotia to have this world-class piece of infrastructure that is directly on our doorstep. So oftentimes people ask, well, what is the advantage of Halifax? And of course, here in Nova Scotia, it in many respects goes without saying because it is right here, it makes a lot of sense for us to utilize Halifax. But just a couple of highlights for you. The Port of Halifax is the fourth largest container port in Canada, measured in annual container throughput. And while we're not as large as, say, the Port of Vancouver or the Port of Montreal, we have a unique mix of services that gives Nova Scotia exporters an unparalleled access to global markets. And we think this is a huge advantage for Nova Scotia companies. In just a few moments, I'm going to share with you some of those direct connections. We can handle the world's largest vessels, and in fact, even though we're a smaller port by way of volume than certain other Canadian ports, the largest vessels that call at any port in Canada call at the Port of Halifax. So, and the other advantage for Halifax is geographically, we're on the Great Circle route. So transit times to Europe, for instance, are very fast, which is wonderful. So there's a wide variety of service providers that serve the Port of Halifax, from ship lines to trucking and warehouse companies, temperature-controlled cargo services, all of which help to facilitate cargo growth. We have a number of different ship lines that serve our port, some of them very, very large and some of them very small niche markets. And many of these small ship lines are in fact on that European routings, which I'll share with you. We also have what a very unique thing for Halifax is we have more direct calls between Asia with Asia and Europe and Latin America than any other Canadian port. And what I mean by direct calls is that A seaport is in many respects like an airport. You can get from any airport in the world to any other airport. The question is, how many times do you change planes to do it? Well, an ocean port is exactly the same. You can get from any port globally to any other port globally. The question is, how many times do you change vessels? So Halifax is very unique because we do have more, as I say, more same vessel port pair connections than any other port. We have 66 of them. You don't have to change vessels as often in using the port of Halifax that you would with other ports. So again, in supply chains which are very complicated and sometimes lengthy, Halifax can often suit your needs a lot more so than another port. And of course, as I mentioned, we have over 70 trucking and warehouse partners in the Halifax area. So again, a wonderful background and support system for cargo that's moving through the port. So one of the things that I'll point out on our website, which is, as you can see down in the lower left, porthalifax.ca. We have a tool on our website or a section on our website called the Port Operations Center. So there are a number of different tools on there that I encourage you to check out. For instance, we've got all of our route maps listed there. We have the directory of service providers, as I mentioned to you earlier. If you're looking for a warehouse operator in Halifax or a trucking company or whatever, you can access those companies through our directory of service providers. There's also some wonderful tools to help you get a handle over what routing options there might be in terms of our transit time calculator. So it shows the total transit time between Halifax and a particular discharge port, for instance. So there's all sorts of tools there that I would encourage you to take a closer look at. At Halifax, we continue to invest in the future and in future volume opportunities. With our two container terminals, as I noted, our current throughput capacity is in excess of 1.5 million TEUs, and right now our actual throughput is only around 500,000. So we have ample room for growth and in throughput at our port. But that said, we don't sit still. We are anticipating that as larger vessels cascade into service that are coming on board and being built currently, we need to ensure that our infrastructure is there to handle it. So, for instance, in the upper right, you'll see the infilling of one of our finger piers that will allow for a massive acreage expansion at the South End Container Terminal down at Point Pleasant Park. There's a new customs examination facility at the Fairview Cove Terminal. There's all sorts of new infrastructure on the terminals, new infrastructure investments such as super post-Panamax gantry cranes and new electric RTGs, et cetera, et cetera. So there are all sorts of plans that we're being proactive on in terms of investments for the future. So at Halifax, as noted, we have two container terminals. I will note that you'll notice the number of reefer plugs. So reefer, or temperature controlled capability, is an extremely important asset at the Port of Halifax. We have a lot of reefer capabilities here at Halifax. In fact, a lot of the ship lines that call because of that reefer market. And of course, seafood is all about temperature controlled cargo, keeping it frozen, keeping it refrigerated, et cetera. So we have basically anytime you see a white box on the terminal, that's a temperature controlled box. So we see a lot of white boxes moving through the Port of Halifax. And of course, there's a large support structure for reefer container movements at Halifax, whether it's technicians to service the reefer boxes, the plugs on the terminal, et cetera, et cetera. So we're well positioned for moving temperature controlled cargo, as we currently do move quite a bit. I'll share with you some specific. So that was sort of a general overview of the port, but now I'm going to just take a moment to go into some of the details on the markets in Europe in question. Now, I apologize, this might be a little small for you to read, but my understanding is that these slides are going to be available to you after. Yes, so you can certainly go in and take a look at these. And of course, if you have any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you either during this webinar or afterwards. So what these four regions are, or countries are, for 2024 and year to date 2025. The numbers are in metric tons, and these are exports. So basically, in the upper left, for instance, the port of Halifax's seafood exports to France are shown here in the upper left. What is, again, remember, as I said earlier, transshipment and et cetera is often done in ocean shipping. So, for instance, a lot of our shipments to France would move through the port of Rotterdam, for instance. We also would move through Antwerp, Bremerhaven, Le Havre to get to that France market, for instance. So that's why you see these ports listed in blue, because that would be, as an example, the transshipment port that those ports go through in order to get to those particular markets. I will spend a little bit of time on, and I'll quickly run through, and again, these slides are going to be available to you afterwards. We have a number of different services that serve the European market. So this is an example, for instance, of the ZIM, the ZCA service, which is also known as the Hapag-Lloyd AL7 service. So both ship lines are on the same vessel. So when you see red, that means export. So the vessel would come in from Europe, call at Halifax, go down the eastern coast of North America, and then go over to the Mediterranean with a first stop in Valencia, for instance, and then it would circle back. So there's an example of an excellent coverage in the Mediterranean area. For North Europe, Atlantic Container Lines, ACL, has their what they call their A service, which is a wonderful service that serves these ports in northern Europe. Next, we have again the MSC, the Canada Express service, with a few different ports in the rotation. And then MSC also has their Med Canada service, which has outstanding connections in the Mediterranean, with 4 calls alone to Italy, for instance. And then a more of a niche service, but nonetheless an important player is Nearent, which serves northern Spain and then Rotterdam. And again, exporting to those particular overseas ports will get you to wherever you wish to go in Europe, whether it's a truck or a rail move from those ports or a transshipment onto another vessel. And then Maersk, the CAE service, and CMA CGM has their SL1 service with North Europe. So what the point is here is that there are a slew of different services that serve the European market. So this final slide is showing what I showed you earlier, but it shows it in a bit of a different way. So for exporting, if you look at the lower right, it shows you the on-the-water time from Halifax to the particular port in question on a particular service. So this sort of at a glance gives you the options so that, for instance, if you're using a particular ship line now and want to expand or diversify your use of different ship lines, this would give you an at a glance view of some other opportunities that could be available to you. Just for although this is a discussion about Europe, I've also included in here our Asian connections and our Americas connections. So again, all of these are going to be available on the presentation that'll be made available to you later. So one final thing that I'll point out is most companies, of course, are already exporting in some manner or another. There are some companies that may not currently be exporting and are wondering, gosh, how do I, Rob, you've shown me all these options and routings and all of that. Well, what do I do next? Where do I go? How do I, and pardon me, how do I actually enact what we're looking at here? Well, the bottom line really is customers or exporters that are looking to diversify their markets, they need a freight forwarder. So what I handle field multiple phone calls and emails a day from customers saying, look, I want to go from Halifax to wherever it is globally. How do I do that? So the biggest response, the most common response I give is you need to speak to your freight forwarder to say, look, I'm looking for different options. That freight forwarders are like travel agents for freight, and they can handle any questions from routing to pricing. They can oftentimes, from a customs brokerage perspective, assist you with tariff questions, all of those sorts of things. They can even help you look at warehousing and trucking options. So that freight forwarder relationship that you have is so critical. And again, our directory of service providers on our website has a list of all sorts of freight forwarders that serve the Port of Halifax. So I hope this overview has been helpful, and we value our seafood exports that go to Europe. There's a lot of them, and it is a wonderful offering that we have based on our geographic proximity. I will say in closing, we work very closely with the Halifax Airport, and the Halifax Airport, their cargo services are primarily going to be for fresh product, lobsters, et cetera, for lifts. Whereas at Halifax, you're at the Port of Halifax, you're going to see more frozen and not live product moving over the port. So that would be probably the biggest difference between the airport and the seaport. So in closing, there we go.
That's great. Thank you so much, Rob. We really appreciate it. Lots of great information there offered on the services offered by the Port of Halifax and the various European markets that you serve. As you mentioned, we will be sending out the presentation and the slides afterwards. So some of the numbers that were maybe a little more difficult for us to see, folks on the call will have the opportunity to see that. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we just really, once again, appreciate having both you and Michael Couch, who is on the call with us today from the Halifax International Airport. Appreciate both of your time this week and sharing your insights. It's, again, really valuable for folks on the call.
Thank you.
All right. So to close out the presentation side of things, we will next hear from Ben Forsyth. Ben is the Export Development Executive for Invest Nova Scotia, and he'll be highlighting some of the programs and services that are available to Nova Scotia seafood companies to grow their export capacity and succeed in international markets. And Ben, it's over to you.
Thanks, Sasha. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. On behalf of Invest Nova Scotia, I'd like to thank Minister Smith and the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, including our MC, Sasha, Davide for his insights, our trade commissioners, Julie, Yannick, Kamer, and Anna, Felipe, of course, and Rob in the Port of Halifax. I'm going to discuss some activities and programs that exist to support Nova Scotia companies to enter and expand into the markets that we've been discussing, for example. These may be familiar if you attended Tuesday's webinar, but I hope a review will be helpful. So to start with trade missions, we have several trade missions that are focused on Europe over the next year. The next one is an Atlantic Canada Seafood Export Cafe mission to the United Kingdom, Germany, and the Netherlands, February 2nd to 6th, 2026. It includes prearranged business-to-business meetings for the companies that are participating with local buyers in each market. And registration is available now on our website and through the Lobster Council of Canada, which is our partner for the mission. There's also Seafood Expo Global, or SEG, in Barcelona, Spain, which Julie mentioned. That's April 21st to 23rd, 2026. This is one of the world's largest seafood trade show events. Like she said, a good mission for anyone who's just joining the seafood market, or if you're interested in the European markets. Nova Scotia has a large booth in the Canada Pavilion, which is the photo on the left there. And you'll have an opportunity to meet buyers, not just from Spain, but all over Europe and the rest of the world. And then in October 2026, this year's edition just closed, but there will be another mission October 6th to 8th, 2026. Conchimar originally was focused on frozen food, but it's a major meeting place for seafood suppliers and buyers, and it's a good opportunity to meet customers from Spain and France and Portugal in the region. And on into our programs. One of our largest programs is the Export Development Program, which provides funding in two different streams. Stream one supports travel for export development. It can support trade missions or business trips that are your own initiative. So participating in those trade shows that I mentioned, or you can use it for export development that you're planning. And it provides that funding through airfare stipends and per diems. Stream two supports hiring a consultant or a service provider with the goal of addressing your export barriers. For example, if you need market research or if you need a consultant to help adapt your product to a local market. Companies can claim up to $15,000 per year, and the program this year runs until January. So if you have a project in mind or a trip, then I would recommend applying soon. The Market Entry Development Program is an Atlantic-wide program from the Government of Canada and the Atlantic provinces. The goal is to connect the participants to an in-market consultant, and they'll help to provide market research, a market entry strategy, and introductions for business development, making contacts in the market and starting your business development. And finally, our Trade Market Intelligence Service can help by providing market research to identify export opportunities. And this is a service that's provided by Invest Nova Scotia through its research department. Companies can apply to the service, and it's free for companies that are approved. And the end result is a customized research report that's based on the pre-planned topics and the questions that you pose to help you export to different markets. So thank you. Feel free to get in contact with us. We have a lot more information about these missions and programs on our website, but if you want to get in touch, then I'd be also pleased to discuss the programs and trade missions one-on-one with you. Thanks very much. And I'll pass it back to Sasha. I think we have some time for questions. And I'd like to read one out from Felipe, which was for Davide, if he's still online with us. And the question he posed was how much of the Canadian products that he buys comes not directly from Canada, but from EU countries. And that also made me wonder how much product you might buy that's of Canadian origin, but comes through the United States as well. Davide, do you mind addressing those?
Yeah, I guess like 20% of the product that we buy sell is come from Canada and not from the United States. Nothing that is Canadian origin that we buy from the United States, honestly. No. And the other question was, yeah, no, that maybe that was
Okay.
from John. If can reply. For mixed container, yeah, usually help. It depends which type of product and depend from which type of product that you can combine. Usually, it depends always.
Perfect.
The
Thanks,
question.
Davide. Yep.
Yeah.
And lots of comments coming in. Any other questions for Davide or Felipe or trade commissioners or Rob?
I do have one question that I would like to put out there. Just for Nova Scotia seafood companies, and this is open to whoever wants to chime in on this. Some folks on the call are experienced in, selling their products in the EU already. Some may just be joining to learn more about the opportunities and are considering adding the EU onto their export portfolio. How can they position themselves in market, like in promoting their product or in, having companies choose them? Like, how should they be marketing their product, I guess, to stand out in the market? Food for thought.
Sorry, may I jump in? Well, I think that any company trying to sell in Europe, any country, first of all, of course, is market research. I mean, there's no use in trying to sell anything in Europe. Europe is a very complex market. I mean, and as we have seen today, there are many interconnections. I mean, you can ship your product to Rotterdam that ends up in France, and maybe it is then re-exported to Italy or other European countries. So, and not only that, but also the way products are sold in different European channels, being supermarkets or fishmongers or online retail. So I would suggest that anyone going to Europe should first of all do some market research. Market intelligence is key. I mean, trying to find out what products are sold in markets, which formats, what brands, if these products have been re-exported within Europe or repacked in Europe, whatever, and then find out if there's any fit, if there's any room. Not, I mean, prices I would say is just the last thing. But first of all, if the products that are sold or marketed in Europe are good for what I am producing in Nova Scotia, that would be my first suggestion.
And sorry, Felipe, sort of building on that, like storytelling about Nova Scotia's premium quality, like our fishing history, like obviously, I think we're still trying to raise awareness of Nova Scotia as part of Canada, but are these some factors that companies should consider as well?
Well, probably trade commissioners here will have a say on this. But one thing, I mean, when it comes to seafood, you can see brands. I mean, you go to a supermarket, but mainly in supermarkets, not so much in the fishmongers. You can see some brands, and some brands are quite popular among European consumers, or some origins like Norway, for instance. But when it comes to Canada or Nova Scotia, I mean, the problem is that not many people know. Not even the professionals, the importers. Well, they don't distinguish between Canada or Nova Scotia or other regions or provinces. So, but that's one thing I think we should work on. I mean, try, because people like stories, like people like hearing about the origin, how the species have been fished, how where they come from. I mean, stories are very important, and retailers are also asking for different stories, different origins. So I think that yeah, I mean, Nova Scotia stands out as a premium origin. It's wild, it's sustainable, but we have to communicate not only the brands or the exporters, but all of us in general about Nova Scotia. We have to tell more about why Nova Scotia is different, what are we offering, and that story, it will be probably welcome among not only importers but also consumers.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Felipe. Just checking to see if there are any other questions. Unfortunately, the chat cleared when I had to leave for a moment. Ben, are you seeing anything on your end?
No, I think that might be a good note to leave it on, unless anyone wants to jump in with a final question.
Okay, perfect. Well, on that note, I guess we will wrap things up. Once again, a sincere thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to join us today. Minister Smith, Julie, Yannick, Comer, Anna, Felipe, Davide, Rob, Ben. I hope I've captured everyone. It's been an honor to have you join us. We really appreciate your time. And to all of the folks that have been on the call with us, whether it's been all along or just popped in for a few moments, we really, really appreciate having you here today as well. And a special thank you on my behalf to the team at Invest Nova Scotia that helped in coordinating and planning these webinars. Ben, Carolyn, Lorraine, great partnership. Really, really appreciate your help. And I will just mention at the end of Ben's presentation, I just wanted to reinforce that if any companies on the call haven't already reached out to Ben to learn more about the opportunities or how either Invest Nova Scotia or the Market Development Division of the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture can help you, whether it's market research or insights, the programs that Invest offers, as Minister Smith said, we are all here to support you, and we're available to you whenever you need. So on behalf of both the department and Invest Nova Scotia, thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope to see you again for another webinar. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Great job pulling this together.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.